That sounds insincere, but it's not. It's sincere. If American citizens colluded with a hostile foreign power to hurt the United States, we would want to know about it. We would never defend disloyal behavior like that, no matter who the president was. So for the last year, we have consistently held back. Even as ominous signs accumulated, we struggled against calling the Mueller investigation a partisan witch hunt designed to topple a president. We didn't want to think that it was. Unfortunately, it's getting harder to deny that now. As federal judge T.S. Ellis put it last week, Mueller is seeking only information that, quote, would reflect on Mr. Trump or lead to his prosecution or impeachment. There you have it. That's not a law enforcement investigation he's describing, assuming it ever was. That is a hit job on a democratically elected leader. The left knows this, and of course it pleases them. Removing Trump from office is the only principle they recognize. But instead of admitting that, they lecture the rest of us in grave tones about the rule of law, like they really care what the Constitution says. Of course they don't. As Pat Buchanan pointed out in a pretty smart piece over the weekend, Mueller doesn't have the power to take Trump out. No independent counsel would. The only institution empowered to prosecute a president is the Congress. The presidency is a political office. Voters get to decide who fills it. Other elected officials check the president's power, not unaccountable investigators or rogue FBI agents, not Peter Strzok or Lisa Page, the Congress. If the president has committed a crime, the Congress can put him on trial. That's called impeachment. They could do it tomorrow if they wanted. It's in the Constitution. In impeachment, and this is the best part, takes place openly, in public. The rest of us can watch it and evaluate it every step of the way. There are no redacted documents or leaked text messages from creepy FBI agents. The whole thing is transparent, and that's how democracies are supposed to operate, openly. Ironically, the one group that understands this is the Democratic base. Kind of amazing, but it's true. They badly want to impeach Donald Trump, and they say so. Their leaders in the Democratic Party lie about it, and they do it for the same reason they lie about everything, because all they care about really is power. They don't want to scare voters before the midterm election, so they don't mention impeachment, and instead they use unelected bureaucrats with guns to crush the presidency. And the worst part is it's working. Byron York is chief political correspondent at the Washington Examiner. Jonathan Turley is a law professor at George Washington University, and they both join us tonight. Professor Turley, first to you. Why not just say we want to impeach the president? We think he's committed high crimes and misdemeanors. Here, they do think that. Why should that be embarrassing? It's a constitutional procedure.
Well, they certainly should be open about if that is their motivation. And there's no question that the preferred route for the Constitution is to have a trial in the Senate after impeachment in the House,
right?
To have that decision. You can always still impeach someone once they are removed from office. There is an ongoing academic debate whether a sitting president can be indicted, but most prosecutors yield to the impeachment process.
I mean, there's no debate over what's the most democratic mechanism for dealing with a president who's done something wrong. It's by using the representatives that voters elected, correct?
Right, that's the preferred way. I mean, the fact is that the framers gave us a process by which we could first impeach and then remove a president.
Right.
And as long as you can prove high crimes and misdemeanors. Clearly, some Democratic members are running on that. I don't see the problem, frankly, with Trump also running on that. I think that for Trump to say, look, this is about my impeachment, I have no problem with that, because obviously that is an underlying narrative for the other side. But I think what will have to happen first is Mueller will have to issue a report, and then if Congress changes hands, particularly the House, you could very well see an impeachment process.
So, Byron, the question of the subpoena, we saw yet another piece of information leaked in the press recently that the Mueller people are considering subpoenaing the president. The White House is saying on background, we may reject that. Where does it stand?
That's where it stands right now. We don't know if Mueller is really going to do this. We have never had this come to a conflict in history. The Nixon case was about subpoenaing documents, about evidence, not actually testimony. With Bill Clinton, Ken Starr subpoenaed Bill Clinton, and then they worked something out so that Ken Starr would withdraw the subpoena while Bill Clinton testified, but he did get a few things that you would not get if you went in front of a grand jury. He got to keep his lawyers in the room with him. He did it on video. He didn't go to a grand jury room, and the time was limited. So, on the other hand, he actually did testify. I think what you're seeing right now with this case is that Trump has realized, perhaps lately, that this is more of a political fight. This is an impeachment fight more than anything. So while his lawyers talk about whether a president can or cannot be subpoenaed or called to testify, Rudy Giuliani, who's really more of a spokesman right now, and others are working to discredit the independent counsel because, or the special counsel in this case, because if it does come to the House, and by the way, the reason Democrats aren't doing this now is because they're a minority in the House of Representatives.
Well, sure, but they're also not talking about it. Most of them. I mean, some fringe members are.
Remember the 2006 example when George W. Bush's numbers were just terrible. The Iraq War was going terribly. The Democrats were running to try to win Congress in those midterms in 06. A lot of Democrats were talking about impeachment, but the public really didn't want it. Nancy Pelosi came out about this time of the year in 2006 and said impeachment is off the table. Today, though, 71% of Democrats in a recent poll said they want to see Trump impeached if Democrats take the House.
And the leaders know that full well.
So the leaders know that.
Of course, and that's what's so disingenuous for them to deny it. If you were running the president's legal team, and you should be, I would say, would you allow him to speak to anyone from Robert Mueller's investigation?
You know, look, that's a tough question, but I actually think that he should have taken the deal to go some time ago and sit down. I wrote a column months ago that said it's a good deal if they stick with the 4 categories that Dowd and Ty Cobb negotiated. Could you prepare the president for that? I think you could. And I think that was the quickest way to diffuse this. The question is really the end game. If you basically defy the subpoena, I think that he will lose. The existing case law favors Mueller. And once he wins in that process, you give him a court order where you can negotiate with him, but he's in a much stronger position. He could demand, and a court could very well go along with a conventional grand jury appearance. So the question is, what is the end game that you're trying to lay out? I personally believe the president could sit through it. People keep on saying he's going to be a disaster, he's going to burst into flames. I disagree with that. I've done a lot of depositions that were more complicated than this, and I think you could prepare this president for this.
Boy.
And Trump has done a lot of depositions himself.
He has experience on his side, right?
Having interviewed him many times and seen very precise people go to jail.
True.
Having fallen into perjury traps by experts.
Look, there's risks on both sides here. There's no question about it. So there's no risk option. So, you know.
Gentlemen, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Great to see you. Joel Payne helped direct advertising on Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign, and he joins us tonight. So, Joel, it's a really simple question. Impeachment is a constitutional mechanism. There's nothing to be embarrassed about here. As a factual matter, if you think the president has committed crimes, he's demonstrably unfit to preside over the country, and 71, you just heard Byron say, 71% of Democrats believe that, then why lie about it and say we're never going to impeach him when that's what you do to a president you think is...
Man, after listening to that open, you almost convinced me that that was going on, Tucker. That's not what's going on. Democrats aren't lying to cover up their desire to impeach the president. They're trying to find the truth.
71%?
They're trying to find the truth as to what happened here. They're trying to get to the bottom of why this president and why his team and his inner circle have decided to cover up their engagement with the Russian government. That's what this is about.
What engagement with the Russian government? I mean, this is such
we know
familiar. I hate to plow the same ground once more, but
members of the president's inner circle on the campaign have already been either have pleaded guilty or have come up with plea deals.
To what exactly? Colluding with Russia? Oh no, none of them. None of them.
Well, Tucker, the investigations...
No, look, I'm not defending, nor would I ever defend Paul Manafort's sleazy business dealings, which everyone
Okay,
has
and that's
known
the
about for
chairman of
25
his
years.
campaign.
Great.
Yeah.
But that has nothing to do with colluding with the Russian government. He was working for the Ukrainian government, which is, by the way, a separate government. Hostile to the Russian government.
If you are comfortable with your president having a chair of his campaign that had that kind of interaction with that type of person at the head of his campaign, great, go with that.
I wouldn't be comfortable having dinner with Paul Manafort, personally.
Okay.
Just saying that. So this is not...
we've agreed on something
Look, but is this a referendum on the moral character of Paul Manafort? Okay, then I guess he pleads guilty. But this is no. It's a question very specifically about whether or not officials in the Trump campaign colluded with the Russian government to skew the election. There's no evidence of that. There's no suggestion that happened. This whole thing is a crock designed to do what impeachment is designed to do, which is take out a president.
I was actually listening to that conversation you had with Byron and with Jonathan, and what's interesting to me is this. You know, the president has not cooperated with this investigation at all. All we hear is tweet, 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 tweet. And I know you wanted to talk about the fact that the poll numbers are coming down on the Mueller investigation. You want to know why? Because this president is running an opposition campaign against Bob Mueller and his entire team for the last 6 months.
Yeah, well, you're right.
So hey, listen, if I spent 6 months beating you down and saying that Tucker Carlson likes to steal, if I said Tucker Carlson likes to steal cars at night after the story every night, I'm sure I could get a number of people to believe that.
So the president's posture should be what? Hire an exclusively partisan Democratic staff. Whatever you do to me. Yeah. You can take my campaign chairman and show up with guns drawn at 4:30 in the morning and roust his wife out of bed. You can take Admiral Flynn on the basis of like no real crime and force him to plead guilty by threatening his son. And I just have to stand there and be like, oh, that's totally cool. It's the rule of law. That's not the rule of law.
The president should be honest. He should be forthright. By the way, if I hear perjury traps, too. Perjury traps sound to me, you know what that sounds like to me? You're afraid of your client not being able to tell the truth.
First of all, he's not my client.
I'm not talking about you. I'm saying the president's legal team.
Martha Stewart, a threat to no one, under investigation by this same group of people, roughly speaking, for insider trading. In the end, she went to prison not for insider trading, but because she, quote, lied to a federal agent. Anything you say that can't be proved, if you freelance a little bit, you can go to jail. It happens all the time. That's a real thing. As a liberal, I think you'd be upset about that.
Well, I'm upset about the fact that we have a president that we can't trust in front of a grand jury or in front of an investigative panel. We can't trust that he can tell the truth.
You know, let me ask you. I don't know how many
conversation.
lawyers you know. Go ask the next 3 lawyers you trust. And I'm sincere.
Okay.
Liberal, doesn't matter what their politics are. Would you talk to the FBI if you weren't compelled to? And not one of them will say yes, because they're terrified of what we were just talking about, getting busted on a perjury charge for misspeaking to a federal agent. That's a
Tucker, if you and I can't agree on the fact that the president should be willing to go in front of the FBI and tell his honest-to-God story about what happened with this, then we've got bigger problems here.
Really?
If we can't trust the president, if we can't trust our president to not perjure himself in front of Bob Mueller and his team, that's a problem.
Do you think
that's a problem for the president?
Do you think that Martha Stewart should have gone to prison?
This is not about Martha
Stewart.
Well,
it's about every American in the last 10 years that I've been paying attention who went to federal prison for perjury while speaking to a federal agent. Would you talk to the FBI?
I'll tell you what.
No, I'm serious. It's a sincere question. Yeah. If an FBI agent said, I've got a lot of questions for you, I'm not going to compel you. I just like to come in and talk. Would you do it without a lawyer?
I mean, of course you would do it with a lawyer.
Oh, why? Because you just tell the truth. You're fine.
Tucker, that's not, you're deflecting from the issue here. Like, if you want to have a conversation about Martha Stewart, I'd love to. We can get Martha, we can get Snoop Dogg, we can have a whole conversation.
I would just say, in parting, Joel, never speak to the FBI unless you have to.
Deal.
Thanks. Stormy Daniels' saga, meanwhile, proves the president, they say, and his cronies are predatory criminals. Okay. But if there's a crime here, what is the crime exactly? And who's the victim of it? You hear about the story every single day, but no one ever asked that. We're going to next with Mark Stein. Stay tuned.
Tucker Carlson is brought to you by Non-Drowsy 24.
Stop making such a big deal about this. Everyone knows it's just an act.
I work in adult films. We're not really known for our acting.
I solve North and South Korea. Why can't I solve us?
Sorry, Donald, it's too late for that. I know you don't believe in climate change, but a storm's a-coming, baby.
Stormy Daniels, climate activist. Of course, everything's inevitable. She was deeply traumatized by her alleged relationship with the president and the $130,000 she got afterward. So traumatized that she decided to relive it on Saturday Night Live on Saturday, in case you missed it. By this point, millions of dollars have been spent investigating the Stormy Daniels story. CNN has turned its entire daytime schedule over to examining the details of the story. Allegedly, investigators are on the hunt for a crime. But if there was a crime, what was it exactly? And more to the point, who is the victim of this crime? Richard Goodstein is a lawyer. He advised both of Hillary Clinton's presidential campaigns, and he joins us tonight. Richard, thanks for coming on.
Sure, of course.
So, I mean, a prerequisite for a crime is a victim, right? Someone has to suffer because of what happened in order for it to be a crime. Who's the victim of this crime?
Well, in terms of the criminal law, it appears that what the Trump campaign, whether it's he himself or Michael Cohen or somebody else, engaged in campaign finance violations, probably banking violations, right? So when you basically make a contribution, the notion that this was done to resolve a family issue is preposterous. This affair happened in 2006. To say, and then all these women came out. Let me finish one thing. All these women came out of the woodwork. He admitted to grabbing people by the genitals, and to say that somehow only then, in a week or two before the election, that this was needed to spare her, Donald Trump's family the trauma of having to open up to what happened between him and Stormy Daniels. It's preposterous.
Where's the victim here? I mean, no, it's a sincere question because look,
the American public is the
victim. So here you have Donald Trump accused of sleeping. He didn't conduct an affair, even if the allegations are true. He slept with this woman once, she says. So if that happened,
of course,
and she got paid, according to her, 130 grand,
right,
for that, which is kind of a lot, for that. So is she the victim, do you think?
Yeah.
I mean, she and her lawyer going on television aggrieved. Wouldn't that really be kind of extortion, though?
Well, again, the victim...
Sincere question. If
no, it's not
people
extortion.
sleep together on a voluntary basis, and then later one of them says, you know what, in order not to tell anybody about that, you need to pay me money.
Right.
What would that be called?
Well, he's trying to enforce an agreement which she says and her lawyer says is not enforceable because he didn't sign it, right? There's usually two parties to a contract.
But before that, the agreement itself, if you and I engage in voluntary behavior together, let's say we drink a 12-pack, we're not supposed to, and you say, I'm going to tell people about that unless you pay me money, and I do, you're extorting me, aren't you?
No, they had a contract.
You're not extorting me.
They had a contract which he didn't sign, so they didn't have a contract. In fact,
the allegation is he paid her money and apparently did through his lawyer in order that she wouldn't talk about this thing that she says happened. So hold on, it's a sincere question.
I understand.
And I know you're not allowed to ask this on CNN because, I guess I don't know why. Me too or something. But it's a real question.
Yeah.
Why is that not extortion?
Yeah, so it's the American public that was denied justice here because had they known the facts before the election, you know what, somebody, one of these suburban women who seem to be peeling away from Donald Trump in real time, they may have actually changed their
So really
judgment.
quick, because I want to take what you're saying seriously.
Yes, of course, please do.
Finding it to stifle the laughter.
Right. Yeah.
Describe the voter who voted for Trump in November of 2016 who would have been shocked to learn that he'd had a one-day relationship with a pornographic actress and paid her not to talk about it.
1 month after his wife had given birth, okay?
Right.
And that he paid $130,000 to cover up. I think even for these suburban women who didn't like Hillary Clinton, who went to Donald Trump because they were just willing to roll the dice, even for them, and I think it's happening in real time today, that's a bridge too far.
So even after like 115 Howard Stern programs where he bragged about adultery, even after 35 years in the public eye where his marriage is disintegrated on the front page of the New York Post, even after the Access Hollywood tape, there was someone out there, or enough of them to change the course of the election, who would have been so stunned by this, like, that doesn't sound like the Trump I know. Are you saying this seriously? Is this like an elaborate joke, or are you being serious?
So the suburban women weren't listening to Howard Stern, okay?
They had no idea.
They were listening to what Donald Trump was saying, and he denied it. Now, who here in your audience thinks that Donald Trump is telling the truth about this? Is there a soul? Literally, is there one person out there who thinks he's telling the truth?
We had the access. See, I'm assuming, and I assumed the second I heard it, that it was true. Because I always thought that kind of thing was true.
So you assume your president's a liar is what you're saying.
What I'm assuming is that people voted for Trump because the people in charge had so mismanaged the country, wrecking the economy, watching as the middle class died, getting us into pointless wars, that they wanted something really different. And they voted for Trump despite his personal life.
That's what I
thought.
You assume the President of the United States is a liar, and I agree. And the concern is, how will we know when he's telling the truth about things that matter? Because we know he's lying about this.
Well, here's when he was telling the truth, when he said the people in charge, and I would include Jeb Bush and everybody in the Democratic field, are complicit in wrecking the country, and we want something new. That's what the election was about. Yeah. Did you miss that part?
And I think the next election will be, do you want your child to grow up to be like Donald Trump? That's what the next election is going to be about. You've asked me that question over and over. That's what it's going to be about.
By the way, or Eric Schneiderman, who we're going to talk about next.
Please do.
Yeah.
He's not president. Donald Trump is.
I hope we get into the Cast the First Stone contest. That'll be me. Richard, thank you.
My pleasure.
Great to see you.
Sure.
Stormy Daniels' lawyer, Michael Avenatti, has spent weeks on television. Looks more like pro wrestling than lawyering, but whatever, you decide.
Mr. Trump will not serve out his term. No way, no how.
Lawyers don't normally do talk shows.
I'm not your normal lawyer, I guess.
Every statement that I've made, every prediction in this case thus far, Don Lemon, has come true. The only out that the president will have, the only out, will be to resign the office.
This is not a publicity stunt. I mean, this is serious business. We're going to continue to use the media. I think we've used it with great success.
Guys, my eyes are like close together. It's like this whole thing is unbelievable. Mark Stein is an author and columnist, and he joins us tonight. Mark, I'm still on the quest to get my one question answered, which is this crime that supposedly took place, who's the victim of it?
I would have to disagree, I think, with Richard slightly, because if anybody is, it's the president. The only crime that's going on here is blackmail. This woman and Trump engaged in an act that I would not have wanted to engage in with her, but it was consensual, and she threatened to talk about it. They signed a non-disclosure agreement for $130,000. One of the stupid things about non-disclosure agreements is that if one party breaks it, then in order to demonstrate that they breached the non-disclosure agreement, you have to disclose it yourself. So they're fairly pointless and stupid things.
Yes,
but in fact, this woman, well, I mean that as a semi-serious point here, Tucker, because this story is a lot of things, but it's not a crime. And when you look at this guy Avenatti going on talk shows, he's brilliant. He plays a good sleazy bum shyster lawyer on TV, but he doesn't actually have a case in the courtroom, because the only people who are committing any crime here are the two shakedown artists, which is Stormy and her lawyer.
Have you heard anybody, look, I don't have strong feelings about any part of this case, and that's why it took me until yesterday to realize, wait a second, why is nobody saying that? It's just such an obvious point. She got $130,000. Why does that make her a hero? That doesn't seem like the kind of behavior that we would be in favor of.
Well, one of she's an aging porn star, which is not a good thing to be. I haven't seen any of her motion picture roles, but on Saturday Night Live, when she delivered that line that porn stars aren't known for their acting, she actually delivered it totally woodenly, so that even by porn star standards, she seemed to be a fairly wooden actress. And I think yes, it is. And evidently she needs the money. But to go back to what you were talking about with Richard, my view of Trump is that people chose him in the nominating process because he'd done everything. Mitt Romney was the worst guy on the planet because he gave a wedgie to a kid in grade 3, if you recall, and he put a dog on his roof and drove the dog to Canada. And people picked Trump this time because they know that if he ever drove a dog to Canada, he'd give him a wedgie every half mile up I-95. So people assume that Trump has done everything and it's baked in the cake.
So maybe the election wasn't really a referendum on Trump's personal life or his moral standing. Maybe there were other issues that voters are trying to get our attention on, get us to pay attention to, and we're not.
Yeah, I think if you live in a broken down town where the mill's closed and your daughter's got nothing to do except the night shift at the quickie crap and she's dating a heroin dealer, you're not actually voting for Trump because he's the perfect gentleman. You're voting for Trump because everything else you've voted for in the last 20 years has failed you.
That is absolutely right. And it leads seamlessly into our next segment, because we really are going to continue trying to talk about the issues that this is all about, you know, and it's not Stormy. Anyway, thank you, Mark. It's great to see you.
Thanks a lot, Tucker.
Well, Mexico ships more drugs into this country than any other country. Heroin, primarily, but also cocaine, methamphetamine, marijuana. In return, we send them hundreds of millions of dollars in foreign aid. Why are we doing that? Well, one congressional candidate is finally asking that question, and she joins us next. This is a Fox News alert. Nobody's career has been boosted more by the Me Too movement than New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman. He has loudly pursued a civil rights case against disgraced film mogul Harvey Weinstein. But now, one of those ironies that can only happen in 2018, a well-sourced New Yorker piece says that 4 women claim Schneiderman may be the worst abuser of them all. 2 of the accusers have made their allegations publicly. They say Schneiderman hit, slapped, and choked them. Both say he threatened to kill them like a lunatic. One says he warned he could have her followed and tap her phone if she defied him. Obviously, these are just allegations. Schneiderman has denied them. But if they are true, one person will certainly be vindicated. President Trump tweeted this in 2013 with remarkable, almost spooky prescience. Wiener gone, Spitzer is gone. Next will be lightweight AG Eric Schneiderman. Is he a crook? Wait and see. Worse than Spitzer or Wiener. Whoa! Either he's amazingly lucky on Twitter, or you should ask the president what numbers to pick in Lotto tomorrow. Well, every year, the government of Mexico gets a huge pile of cash from the U.S. government. In 2016, it was $181 million. The year before that, it was $338 million. Just send it over there. What do we get in return for that money? Well, Mexico hasn't done anything to stop illegal immigration. Actually, they abet it. But that's not the only problem with Mexico. Mexico is the biggest source of heroin brought into the United States. It's driving an epidemic that is killing tens of thousands every year. It's also a massive supplier of methamphetamine, cocaine, and every narcotic you can imagine. Why are we subsidizing this? Christina Hagan is an Ohio State representative making a run for Congress. She wants to know what the point of our foreign aid to Mexico is, considering the drug crisis and their role in it. Christina Hagan joins us tonight. Christina Hagan, thanks for coming on. I appreciate that. So what's your proposition here? That we should stop foreign aid to Mexico?
I think that we're in a position, especially in Ohio, where the opioid and heroin epidemic has completely overwhelmed our communities. And unless we hit Mexico right in their pocketbook, we're going to continue to see these drug lords trafficking into our communities. 90% of opioids are coming directly from Mexico. So unless we make them take it seriously, they're never going to.
So I've interviewed countless immigration advocates who say the same thing every time, which is it's a demand problem. The appetite for drugs of American drug users is basically pulling the heroin across our southern border into the U.S. It's our fault. We're the cause of this crisis.
So I look at it as we need to make it less economic for their drug lords to traffic these drugs into our United States. And if we have a border wall, that creates an immediate problem to them providing the supply to the United States. We're throwing all types of dollars at this in the state of Ohio. Our law enforcement's involved. Our educators are involved. Every front is working on this. I think that we can no longer be on defense. We have to go on offense. Building the wall makes sense. Taxing remittances, stopping the foreign aid that we currently give them. Their government will take it seriously when we make them take it seriously. And so I just think it's not necessarily only supply and demand. It's what we allow for the Mexican government to get away with. We've allowed for them to not take their drug lords and their drug cartels seriously. And they even allow, South America, Central America to continue to funnel people into the United States that are harming our communities and our families, and we have to take a strong Americans First stance.
When you flood a community with heroin, people get addicted to it. The more you pump in, the more addicts you get, and then they lose their capacity for free will. They can't make clear decisions. So the supply and demand argument, as you just pointed out, is insane, and it's offensive, actually. How would we feel if another country were doing this? If South Korea, pick a country, Malaysia, were sending millions of people across the border illegally, taxing social services, and then sending narcotics in that were killing tens of thousands of people a year? Would we see them as a close ally if they were doing that?
Absolutely not. And as a congresswoman, I'll take this seriously. I'll lead on this issue because I know American lives are being lost, and the Mexican government is doing absolutely nothing to stop it from happening. We have to stop the foreign aid of over $320 million a year going to them. The fact that their communities and their economy is thriving because they have legal and illegal immigrants coming to the United States and setting up an economic basis to provide for their families while our families are being crushed by opioid abuse. Tells me we need to take this seriously. We need to be tough on them. We need to tax remittances, and we need to stop all foreign aid immediately. This is ludicrous.
And stop feeling guilty for criticizing a country that is hurting us. So I agree with you there. Thank you very much for coming on. That was
Absolutely.
Great.
Thank you.
Last year they came for Civil War statues. Now the mob demands more. George Washington University students say America's colonial period must be purged from memory too. Huh. It's confusing, but we're going to try to explain it to you after the break. So colleges are completely insane, you know that. It's hard to shock you with these stories, but we found one that might. Students at George Washington University here in Washington have started a petition demanding the school abolish the nickname Colonials for its sports teams. The nickname, of course, honors the soldiers of the American Revolution who, needless to say, fought against colonialism, But according to the petition, the nickname, quote, glorifies the act of systemic oppression. History evidently not the strong suit over at GW. In March, filmmaker Amy Horowitz visited GW and spent 3 hours asking kids there whether the name of the school itself should change. Most said yes. Here's a selection.
Do you think we should consider changing the name of the university?
I think it's definitely worth having a discussion about it.
Personally, I would change the name.
I think that it should be changed. I think that recognition is super important, and I think that
recognition
for who he was as a person.
Do you think it's time to change the name of this university?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Would you change the name if you could do it?
Yeah. Sure.
We've sort of retrospectively mythologized this concept of liberty and freedom.
It's not to say that he wasn't an important man back then. It's just saying that in this day and age, it's not as important, I don't think.
What's the first thing that comes to mind when I say George Washington?
Oh, I think about him owning slaves, yeah.
Jason Nichols is a professor of African-American Studies at the University of Maryland, and he joins us tonight. Professor, I have to say, after watching that tape, I'm for changing the name.
Are you?
Overpriced and silly university, because that's what it is. But I guess what I love about this story, the Colonials, is that the kids there are so dumb that they think the term is glorifying colonialism when, of course, it's glorifying the soldiers who fought against colonialism. But that distinction, that all-important distinction is lost on the geniuses at GW.
Right, but don't you think you could see why that would be an issue? I mean, why not have a name like the Revolutionaries or the Independents or the 76ers or the Patriots? Something that actually seems to make more sense than the Colonials, and you're talking about people that fought against colonial, or even the Continentals. As we know, George Washington fought for the Continental Army.
That's true, so but what you're saying is the kids there are so dumb and so lazy and so high on the legalized weed here in D.C. that they can't be bothered to Wikipedia the term to learn what it means.
Listen,
and instead, they get all mad, angry college student.
Kids are at GW are far from stupid.
Well, I taught there for a semester, and I really liked the kids. It was a master's course.
But you think they're stupid?
That was 15 years ago. I didn't realize, it's always the dumb ones who get all the publicity. There's some actually impressive kids at GW, but the kids behind this are like drooling morons. You'd have to be. You're against the name because you're against colonialism, but the colonials in the name were fighting colonialism?
But the point is, do you think George Washington would want to be called colonial? I mean, he would want to be called, maybe Continentals, or have his name associated with independence, have his name associated with freedom.
Maybe. I mean, he's not here to fill us in on any of the nuances, but I can say for fairly certain, I think he might be honored that they named the school and the city after him.
So let's
and then you're seeing that's, by the way, one of the most expensive schools in the country.
So
all the rich kids are like, oh, we got to change the name of the school because it's embarrassing.
Okay, well, Tucker, why don't you could have an AAU basketball team, and we'll call them the Liberals. Because you fought against the liberals, so we'll just call them the liberals. It doesn't make sense.
Well, it makes sense to this extent, and I'm no American history professor, but the colonial period refers to the time in which the Revolutionary War was fought, because this was, of course, a colony before it was a country. And so it's kind of a broad term that anybody who's even been awake in 6th grade would know about, except apparently the kids behind the petition.
Well, so George Washington, again, he fought in the colonial army for the British at one point. But the problem is this. I think he would want to be attached to the period following colonialism, the period when he actually, after the Constitution, when we were free.
What percentage of the kids who signed this petition, what percentage of the kids who signed this could name the century that the American Revolution took place?
Oh, I think 100%.
You think 100%?
I think 100%.
Okay. Would you be willing to bet cash money on that?
I would.
Because I bet you it's not over 40.
I don't make Tucker Carlson money.
I'm not, and I don't, you know what?
I can't afford that kind of money.
I'll give it 2 to 1. I bet you that not over 40% of the GW kids who signed this could tell you what century the American Revolution was fought in. I bet not 20% could tell you the years of the Civil War. I bet they are totally ignorant of everything and happy in their ignorance. And isn't that the headline?
I disagree.
I disagree.
I teach college students all the time. They have, you know, I think that there sometimes can be a gap in knowledge, but a lot of these kids, I think we're way too hard on some of these young kids. They know a lot more than people are giving them credit.
There's no question. When my iPhone breaks, I corral one of them and say, hey, how does this work? You know what I mean? Download the software. I don't know how to do it. They're geniuses. But if they're attacking the colonials because they think it's colonialism, they're dumb. Sorry, I know I'm being mean. I can't control myself. Professor, it's great to see you.
Always. It's always fun, Tucker. Thanks.
Well, the number of illegal immigrants in the UK has surged past 1 million. Keep in mind, the UK is an island. It's pretty small. So is it now more vibrant and strong in the wake of that? I don't know. We're going to check in with Nigel Farage. He's next.
What if this didn't have to happen? I didn't see it. What if we could go back? What if our car could stop itself?
In IIHS front-end crash prevention testing, nobody beats the Subaru Impreza. Not Toyota, not Honda, not Ford. The Subaru Impreza. More than a car, it's a Subaru.
People would stare. Psoriasis does that.
It was tough getting out there on stage.
I wanted to be clear. I wanted it to last.
So I kept on fighting.
I found something that worked and keeps on working.
Now, they see me.
See me.
See if Cosentyx could make a difference for you. Cosentyx is proven to help people with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis find clear skin that can last. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting Cosentyx, you should be checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms, or if you've received a vaccine or plan to. If you have inflammatory bowel disease, tell your doctor if symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions may occur.
Never give up.
See me.
See me.
Clear skin can last.
Don't hold back. Ask your dermatologist if Cosentyx can help you find clear skin that lasts.
Liberty Mutual stood with me when this guy got a flat tire in the middle of the night, so he got home safe.
Yeah, my dad says their insurance doesn't have that.
What? You can leave worry behind when Liberty stands with you. Liberty Mutual Insurance.
In just days, Publishers Clearinghouse could hand you $1 million. But that's just the beginning, because then you get $1,000 a week for the rest of your life. Wow. Go to PCH.com and enter now. June 29th, you could win it all.
She wants to restore the American dream. Jenna Powell. Here, generations of Jenna Powell's family farmed the land. Here, Jenna Powell worshipped beside her neighbors. Here, Jenna Powell started her own company and grew it into a local success story. Powell will fight the establishment and bring jobs back by cutting taxes and reducing regulations and downsize government so we have more liberty. Jenna Powell, endorsed pro-life champion, faith and family conservative. Jenna Powell for state representative.
I'm Melissa Atkinson, conservative Republican running for the United States Senate. Forget about the ego-fueled catfight between Rhino Renacci and moderate Mike Gibbons. They won't close the deal to remove Senator Brown from his seat, and I will. I'm Melissa Atkinson, small business owner, ardent defender of the Second Amendment, a champion for limited government, and a warrior for the unborn. I support the president's agenda, and I ask for your support on May the 8th. Vote Atkinson. I'm Melissa Atkinson, and I approve this message.
Congressman Jim Jordan, and I'm proud to support Susan Manchester for state representative. There are people in politics who you wish weren't, and then there are folks like Susan, who you are glad chose public service. She shares our conservative values, and she'll fight for them in Columbus. She'll defend the right to life, she'll protect our Second Amendment liberties, and she'll make sure our tax dollars are spent the way they should be. I'm urging you to vote for Susan Manchester on May 8th in the Republican primary.
My name is Susan Manchester, and I approve this message.
The radical left, more unhinged than ever. Who'll stop them? Old conservatives ready to fight back. J.D. Winteregg.
The radical left wants to destroy everything I believe in, but I'm not going to let them. I'm J.D. Winteregg, and I'm running for the Ohio House because I've seen the left up close. I know their real agenda, and it's not what I want for Ohio. It's time to fight back, and that's why I'm asking for your vote in Tuesday's primary.
J.D. Winteregg for Ohio House, a real Republican, not a Kasich Republican.
British Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson is in Washington today. He's urging the Trump administration not to pull out of the nuclear deal with Iran. Tensions with Iran are not Britain's only foreign problem, though. Recently, British members of parliament were told by a former government official that the country's illegal immigrant population has surged past 1 million on the island. That's more than double the total just 12 years ago. Nigel Farage is a former leader of the UK Independence Party, UKIP, which promoted Britain's departure from the EU and sovereignty. He joins us tonight. Nigel, thanks for coming on. You're one person whose foreign policy instincts I trust, so let me just ask you point blank. I understand why the president doesn't like the Iran deal, bad deal, negotiated by bad negotiators. But if we do pull out, does it increase, do you think, the chances that the United States winds up in armed conflict with Iran?
No, I don't think it does. I mean, look, Boris Johnson is there in D.C. He's not just representing the United Kingdom, he's representing the European Union. The Iran nuclear deal was a globalist deal. In fact, a form of appeasement, if you like. Now, you know, if you believe what Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel is telling us, the Iranians are breaking the deal anyway. Better, frankly, to be straight about this, to cut the deal. I think Trump's doing the right thing on this. I do not believe that Boris Johnson will change his mind. And does that make conflict inevitable? No, of course it doesn't.
Good. Well, that's reassuring. So does 1 million illegal immigrants in the UK make some kind of civil conflict inevitable there? It's a lot of people for a small place.
Well, I tell you what it does do. It makes a conflict between voters and politicians very inevitable. Look, the figure's not 1 million. The figure is at least 2 million. The 1 million figure that's being talked about are those that have been here for more than 10 years. And we're back to Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson is proposing that we have an amnesty for at least 700,000 of them. Now, if we do that, we send out a signal to the whole world that Britain is a soft touch. Get a visa, come here, overstay your visa, and nobody will do anything about it. And all this does, it adds to the size of the illegal economy. So many people here illegally don't pay tax. So many here illegally, because of their status, get dragged into criminality or, or other bad things in society. And, it's all well and good for Boris and people like that to say, oh, well, we mustn't talk tough on immigration. It'll make us look nasty. Let me tell you, recent poll out last week, 71% of British people want the government to get rid of people here illegally. There's a massive gap here between Westminster and the real country.
So I read the other day, and I don't know if this can be true or is true, but that that Great Britain has taken in more immigrants in the last 40 years than came to England between 1960 and 1066, the Norman invasion. That the population is completely... That's true? It's a completely different place.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, there's a slight exception post-1945, quite a lot of Polish people and people displaced from Europe. But with that exception, yeah, you're absolutely right. We were taking in a 5-year period, more people than had come in the previous 1,000 years. And that is the extent to which immigration, both legal and illegal, has been completely out of control. Tony Blair started all of this. He wanted to fundamentally change the shape of our country. He succeeded, and sadly, conservatism in this country has not had the courage to stand up and say, this is wrong. And anybody here that talks about immigration, I mean, look, I did for years, one of the main reasons we voted Brexit was to get back control of our borders, and yet, for standing up and fighting for that, I've been demonised, and most people are scared of being put in that position. And I have to say, in many ways, you're very lucky in America. You've got a president who doesn't care what the liberal media says and stands up and fights for the right things.
Yeah, because no one ever asked for this. This isn't democracy. I agree. Nigel, thank you. It's great to see you.
Thank you.
Southwest Airlines had a deadly accident in the air just a few weeks ago, but even when it's on the ground, its flights appear to be coming close to catastrophe.